I actually don't have an opening line for this, so that's kind of awkward. So hello everyone and welcome. My name is Bernhard Everett, and I want to give my reaction or my opinion on a debate between Dr. Jordan Peterson and sorry, I forgot the name, Dillahunty. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but Matt Dillahunty, and it was a very good debate. It's going to be down below in the description after my social media links, together with a video where Matt Dillahunty kind of gave his own opinion on what, how the debate went, and, gave his own opinion on how good it was and stuff like that. Now, for context a bit, I'm going to bring in the chat in a few seconds, but my audience is I usually have German speaking videos, so my audience usually is German. So if there's comments in German, I'm going to translate them to English, and I hope that will work. I also have to still post this, and I really hope that the thumbnail will update, because well, I might, well, I'll have to delete the thumbnail, let's put it that way. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's try this on Minds. Don't know if it actually will do anything good. I don't know. Okay, let's try it here. Let's try it on Twitter and everywhere else, because again, as I said, most of my audience is usually German speaking, so I don't expect there to be too many English speaking people in here initially. Many people might watch it later after I'm done here, finding it through YouTube or whatever, so the explanation I just gave was for those people basically. Alright, and I do have a bunch of notes here because I don't think that well, I need them as a guideline, let's put it that way, and so I'm gonna actually work with notes here. Alright, so, first of all, Jordan Peterson as well as Matt Dillahunty had a lot of very interesting and good things to say, and I respect both of them a lot. I agree with both of them and disagree with both of them. We're gonna do a little spoiler, no, not spoiler, but like disclaimer. What's it called? A bias disclaimer, I guess I could say in a second here, because obviously we should be aware, or I should be aware of what perspective I'm coming from when looking at this. But the debate the two of them had got to a lot of core issues, very deep issues that I've wrestled with in the past. And that I think are very important. Now, that being said, I'm not as high of a caliber of thinker as either of those two. And I obviously don't want to put my, let's say, comparatively pedantic ramblings, or not pedantic, like my comparatively amateurish ranting here, on a level with what they are doing. Obviously, both of them are a lot better at what they're doing than I am, but it's still my thoughts, so this is basically my thoughts in it. So, they had a big part of the discussion boiled down to the same thing Sam Harris and, Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson had it boiled down to when they were debating. Basically a question of morality and God, and basically things of that nature. And in there, Matt Dillahunty had a bunch of claims, and then Jordan Peterson basically said, well, the reason you're moral is because you fundamentally believe in a God, but then he didn't really define what he meant by God. And so they got into a back and forth about that, because again, there wasn't really a lot of definitions or defining going on with the with what is God, what is truth, stuff like that, like important, obviously, talking points when talking about this. Well, I might as well. So the thing is, I had never heard of Matt Dillahunty before this, but I do agree with him on a lot of things he said, in the sense that I would call myself an atheist in that I do not, or I accept that there is no sufficient evidence for the existence of a God. as a like literal physical entity or whatever, and that there's probably no portal to another dimension from wherein they can influence us. A lot of what he said also is very close to Stefan Molyneux's universally preferable behavior, in that he said that, you know, health is generally preferable to sickness. Happiness is generally preferable to sadness. Life is generally preferable to death. And while you might argue about Stefan Molyneux or what he's saying, or whether it's like valid or not, you know, you can argue about all that. But basically, I think that UPB in that case was like the best summary of pretty much the position that Matt had in this conversation. Now, I'm bringing it into this is because that's the direction I'm coming from. I'm basically, I came into, like, okay, so the bias disclaimer is basically, I used to be a Christian up until I was 18 or 19, which is also a few years ago at this point. Then I got to Stefan Molyneux and universally preferable behavior, which obviously has its problems, but from that perspective, that's mostly the religious perspective I had. Maybe just a bit of woo-woo here and there, like spiritual stuff here and there that you could add to that, but mostly that was the perspective. Then I heard Dr. Peterson, and that kind of, you know, made me doubt the perspective a bit. And now hearing Matt basically, you know, saying the perspective I've had for the last few years out loud, obviously made him very sympathetic to me. But as I've said, I had not heard of Matt before this, so I came there through Dr. Peterson. I came there because Sam Harris, in his talk with Dave Rubin, mentioned that discussion was worth listening to, and it is. Again, do look into the description and listen to it. But there is a real problem, I think, I think he called it the secular moral system, is I think what Matt referred to it as. I think there's a real problem with it. And he gave, in his after debate, you know, thoughts. He said, well, I gave this chess example, and that basically is like the best way of describing it. And there's a lot of problems with the chess example he gave too. And what it basically was if we're going to play a game of chess, you know, the rules are kind of arbitrarily made up by someone. The moves that are allowed are kind of arbitrarily made up by someone. Or let's put it this way. The rules and the figures in the game board are made up by someone. Or something. Or, you know, in chess it's someone. In nature it would be something. So basically the chessboard and the figures is the world as we find it. That's my understanding of it, at least. Then the rules of how you can play the game of chess with the figures and the board given, that's something that's basically, I guess, societally created. This is how I understood it. So the rules and interactions we would have in a society would be kind of akin to the rules that we put on the chess figures and the board on how it can be used. Now there's some natural limitations to it, but a lot of it is made up by society. And he says that, well, if we have this game of chess and if the goal is to win, then there are certain moves that are better than others, which is basically, again, UPB in a nutshell. I come back to that because I personally like it, although it's much hated on. But there's a reason it's personal bias why I come back to that. Let's put it that way. But then, I don't know. I didn't quite understand Peterson's rebuttal well, I think. What my personal answer to that would be is like, yes, if you want to win or not lose, then there's certain moves that are better than others. But if the game is not like the aim is not losing, then throwing over the chessboard or wiping it off the table and, you know, smacking the other guy in the face when you start losing, you know, you haven't lost because you knocked over the chessboard. And the other guy can't complain because you smacked him in the face. So the basic rebuttal would be that works as long as everyone agrees on that working, basically. Whereas I think maybe what Peterson means, and this is something many people have criticized, it's incredibly vague, but maybe what he means, or what I think he might mean, is that without a God, without religion, there is no external thing that basically tells you, no, this is definitely the way you have to play it, right? That there are certain rules you can't, you can't take the chessboard and start playing, I don't know, Dame or whatever. Dame is the German word for it. I don't know what the English word for it is. You can't start playing tic-tac-toe on the chessboard because that's not how the game is supposed to be played. That's not what you're in for. So basically, the religion part would be, if I understand correctly, the religion part would be, here's the chessboard, here's the figures, deal with it basically, or no, here's the rules in which way to use the figures. And the rules kind of state, don't wipe the figures off the board and start playing tic-tac-toe maybe, I don't know, something like that. Whereas in the secular moral system, or in the example as I understood it from Matt, or from Mr. Dillahunty, or whatever you want to call him, again, I do agree with him on a large, on the definition of atheism and everything, but the problem I've had with that view in my personal life, or well, not my personal, but my personal thinking is pretty much this. It's like, okay, yeah, as long as everyone accepts that it's chess that we're playing, that's fine. But what if someone decides, no, screw playing chess, I want to play something else, but I want to play chess. So I want to play chess, the other person doesn't. The other person wipes the board clear and says, no, we're playing something else. And I say, no, we want to play chess. What do you do then? Who's right in that situation? Because if I have religion, if I have a God, he says, no, I'm right because God says we're here to play chess. And again, I don't accept that there is enough proof for the existence of a God, so obviously there's no God telling me that I have to play chess, but I guess the thing then comes down to, what if you have that kind of disagreement? What if another person doesn't want to play chess, you want to play chess, and there's no God telling you, or no referee telling you, no, you're playing chess, not that other game? Who wins? The stronger one? Because then your morality is contingent on strength. And what Matt said in his talk, or in his point, which is something I do agree with to a degree, what he said is, well, obviously I value, life more than death, because I'm still living, I didn't commit suicide. I value life more than death, and other people value their life more than their death, and we get together and say, well, it's in our best interest for me to value your life more than your death, and you to value my life more than my death, so that we won't murder each other, and we'll both get to achieve the highest value to basically keep living. So we'll work together, and we'll enforce that. If some third person tries to murder either of us, we're gonna, smack him down with a, I don't know, with a 2x4, I guess. That's the long wooden boards, right? If I understand it correctly. So, yes, we could do that, but that only works as long as the other guy who wants to murder one of us doesn't have two more friends who also, agree with him that it would be better for one of us to be dead, and who will then get their own baseball bats and, kick the crap out of us. So I guess the main problem with Matt's point, which I actually do agree with, but the main problem I have with that, and which I think maybe is what Dr. Peterson wants to point out, again, I'm not quite sure what he wants to point out, but that might be it, is that it works for ourselves. It works for me to say, I want to, I value my life higher than my death. So I want to, eat correctly, I want to do sports so I can extend my life, do what's good for my life. For me personally, there's better or worse things I can do contingent on the goal that I have to stay alive. And maybe that's the case for everyone else who's alive. But the problem in that is in kind of bringing that to the interpersonal level. In basically getting you to accept that my life is more valuable than my death. And really, I think that's where the secular moral system fails, because yes, you can go all Vertragstheoretic, what's that? Contract theorists, like the Hobbesian or Lockean approach, and you can say, look, by the way, hello Jeff Baum. There's the first person who posted anything in chat, so I'm going to open that. Yeah, but okay. You can go that route and say, okay, we all agree on that basic premise, and we're going to push down anyone who disagrees with us on that premise. But that only works until there's a bigger group who disagrees on that premise, in that they say, yeah, we want to stay alive, but we don't want you to be alive. Right? That's the moment it kind of breaks down. As soon as, we say, let's say as a society, we all agree, okay, my life is more valuable than my death. You think the same thing about your life. Everyone thinks the same thing about their own lives. So it's in your own best self-interest to, let's all get together and punish murderers, because we all think that our own lives are valuable, so we don't want any of us to die, and we want to help each other survive. But as soon as you get, like, more than half, or maybe even a third of well-armed people, or the government, who knows, as soon as you get a certain portion of the population says, yeah, my life is important, but yours isn't, let's say Stalinist Russia, right? As soon as you get the communists saying, yeah, my life is important, but yours isn't, and we can, and we have this different moral view where I want to defend my life, but I want to kill you. And since there's no God telling me that, no, your life is also valuable, I can do that. Because there's no reason, there's nothing stopping me, because we have more, we have more force of arms, we're stronger, we have the government in our hands, something like that. We have the power to kill you, and that makes it right. It's kind of the basic problem. Now, maybe quickly, I think there's 3 people only watching at this point, but that's normal. It's pretty early in the morning or afternoon here. I'm just quickly going to explain in German. Hallo, der Grund, warum ich das hier auf Englisch mache, ist, weil es für eine englische Audience ist, und ich werde dann wenn ihr was schreibt im Chat, könnt ihr gerne machen, übersetze ich das schnell auf Englisch und beantworte es so, okay? Alright. So yeah, the reason I'm doing this in English for a usually German audience is, yeah, this isn't like a topic best talked about. I don't know how many people in Germany know who either of these people are, and yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. So if there's going to be German comments in the chat, which obviously there's not too many, then I'll translate them and answer them in English. I hope that's okay for the German audience. If not, tough luck. They're getting enough German-speaking videos as it is. All right. So yeah, I think I made myself clear on that point. I'm not sure on how much sense it makes to you, like if you've seen the debate, how much sense it makes to you. But I think that's the fundamental problem between like the Harris and Dillahunty types on the one hand and the Peterson on the other hand, where Peterson is basically saying, no, we do need religion. We can't have a secular moral system, because in the end, if you just go back to the very beginning of every moral system, it's either someone else told me and enforces it, or we decided ourselves and we're enforcing it ourselves. Now, someone else told me and enforces it is basically the reason most people in society don't go out to murder today, is because someone else, society, tells them, no, you're not gonna. Well, it's not the only reason. Yes, I know it sounds like a strawman. I'm not trying to strawman anyone, but the thing is, or steal something, or I don't know, take something from a shop without getting permission or without paying for it. Like the reason most or many people don't do that is because they've been told that there is a government, that there is a society who will judge them for it and who will punish them for it if they do. That's external, which is kind of like God telling a culture or a civilization, hey, you can't do that, you have to do this, or you ought to do this, you shouldn't do that. And I'll punish you externally if you don't. Whereas if you say, no, there is no God and we can make up our own moral systems, that's fine, and that's true in a UPB sense, as long as we say, yeah, for ourselves, it's in our personal best interest not to murder anyone, so they won't get the idea to murder us. But if someone else says, well, it's in my personal best interest to murder you, so that you can't, I don't know, take taxes from me or something like that, or steal something from me, or so that I get your resources, which is, the government kind of way, right? I personally don't like you, or I want to take your resources in the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. You know, the government just finds a reason, or the people who then take over or make up the government find a reason to dislike a certain group, and they say, well, there's no God telling me to not kill you, and we get to make up our own morality about it, and we're saying that it's, for us personally, generally preferable to kill you and take your shit than to not kill you and take your shit. And maybe we're going to define it on ethnic grounds. Maybe we're going to say this is basically the radical left and like the alt-right kind of argument, like the identity politics argument really is like, okay, yeah, we accept that if we don't say, well, my neighbor's life is valuable, then he'll come over and bash our head in and take our shit. So we're going to say everyone within a certain group's life is valuable, and this group ought to be the strongest or should take over power and then basically smack down any other group. So yeah, it works to a degree where we say, yeah, it's my personal best interest not to murder you so that you won't try to murder me. You know, it's in your best self-interest, and you get together in small groups, but then you get basically, then you get a group who doesn't think like your group, basically, or who doesn't look like your group or whatever. You get like communists and well, non-communists, I guess, capitalists, let's say. You get communists who as a group say, well, it's in our personal best interest to share your wealth around, and the capitalists who say, no, it's in our personal best interest to freely exchange goods and ideas and services and whatever. And then you get the two groups clashing and, you know, basically start killing each other because one's group, self-defined self-interest, you know, threatens the others. I hope I'm, like, I think I'm repeating myself quite a lot here, so I might want to move on a bit. But I hope I made my point clear, in that, yeah, in what I was trying to say. Yeah, okay, so Jeff Baum wrote, I know Peterson, of course, but not the other guy. Yeah, I hadn't heard of the Matt Dillahunty before this. And he also says, I prefer listening to you in English. Oh, thank you very much. I hope that's not because my German voice is annoying. If you want to watch the debate we're talking about, Jeff, you can go down in the description after my social media links, like, should be somewhere in the middle as the sources, and it's like a 1.5 hour debate, after, of course, we're done here. And you can watch it there. I would really recommend watching it. I think it's a great debate. Alright. So, yeah, I got a few quotes from Matt in here where he said, death is generally not in the interest of the living. Yeah, my death isn't in the interest of my living, but your death might be. And that, again, as I stated before, it all breaks down at a certain point. If not with the individual, you say, oh, well, then we form societies or whatever, and we try to, what you call it, you know, we try to protect each other from murderers in our midst. You know, you form a society or a group, but then another society or a group, you might be fine with killing them in your personal self-interest. And that does happen. We've seen over the course of human history, war after war after war after war. We see it in chimps killing each other. Like the chimp tribe says, yeah, in my personal self-interest, we shouldn't kill each other within our tribe, but the other tribes, fuck them. Basically, oh. Shouldn't have cursed. Now YouTube's gonna... Now, whatever. But yeah. Okay, so he says, quote, the secular moral system has as its goal the object of getting better at getting better. And basically, and this is paraphrasing a bit, but basically says, and if your foundations don't serve that, you can change them. So, you know, you have certain foundations at the basis of your secular moral system, and the object, the goal of the moral system is to get better at getting better, whatever the fuck that means. And if you see that, you know, your current foundations don't serve that goal, your current foundations don't make you get better at getting whatever. Again, I don't know what that means, but let's say, for the sake of argument, we actually understood what he's talking about here. If that were actually the goal, and the foundation didn't change, serve that, we could change it. It's like, well, again, the definition's what's better, why would we want to get better, and why does it matter if we want to get better? That's kind of a bunch of questions that would immediately pop up in my mind as a skeptic, I guess, skeptic TM or whatever, right? Because Jordan Peterson at one point said that, so these are your fundamental axioms. And he said, yes. And then said, well, that's things you're not skeptical about. And then Matt Dillahunty, I hate to use the word, but he got really butthurt about that. He said, no, that's, of course I can be skeptic about that. I'm here on a tour talking about how skeptic I am. Again, I really like the dude. I agree with him a lot, but the little, what's it called? The little imitation I did here. I should stop saying like. The little imitation I did here of him, that was basically the impression I got. So, yeah, just because you call yourself a skeptic about something doesn't mean you're a skeptic about everything. And if you have fundamental presuppositions and you're not skeptic about them, well, then you're not skeptic about them. But if they're subject to change, then why do they even matter? Like, who cares? What's the fundamental, like, what's the foundation behind your fundamental axioms, basically? If you say, well, well-being is preferable to not well-being. He talked about well-being in there, which is something Sam Harris also does, apparently. So, well-being is preferable to not being well. It's like, okay, why does it matter? Why do I care? Yeah, your well-being... Well, okay, my well-being, I can understand. Again, all of these I can understand for myself. Yeah, sure, my well-being is preferable to my not being well, but why does that mean I can't bash you over the head if it makes me feel better? And here's this is the fundamental problem with the religious versus non-religious system. Again, I'm going to try to move on because I'm repeating myself for some reason, but okay. So he had the chess analogy, the arbitrary rules and arbitrary goals, but if you want to play the game to win or not to lose, there's better and worse moves, to which I already said, yeah, if you're playing the game not to lose, you can knock over the chessboard and say, screw you, if you start losing, because then you won't lose. I mean, you won't finish the game, but you won't lose. What if I don't care, don't care about chess? That's another thing I already talked about. So he actually addresses it to a certain degree. He said at one point, they talked a lot about Sam Harrison throwing him off the stage, which was pretty hilarious. But not because they actually wanted to do it, but I thought it was funny. So they talked a lot about Sam Harrison wanting him to throw him off the stage and the morality of that, whether that's good or bad. And he said that, there's some actions I can take that are more in Sam's best self-interest. So some things I can do that are more in his best self-interest. But then again, you still haven't given me a reason to care about Sam's best self-interest, especially in those places where it doesn't align with my personal best self-interest. And I think the argument would be, and again, I think I'm getting too close to strawmanning Matt Dillahunty here, so I don't want to do that. So what the argument would be is basically something we're talking about in sociology, or which I've studied in sociology, which is it comes up a lot. It's an iterated game. It's an iterated prisoner's dilemma, for instance. So I'm going to actually use the example of the prisoner's dilemma here. So if you haven't heard it, it's a thought experiment. You got two criminals and both of them were caught, but the prosecution doesn't have enough evidence to convict either of them on the major criminal charges. But they could convict them on like small stuff. So if neither of them talks, they both get like 1 year in prison. Now, if one of them talks, so you have like a what's it called? You have a matrix with 4 plots, or I don't know what exactly you would call those, but okay, so if no one talks, both get 1 year. If one talks, the one who talks does not get any punishment, 0, but the other one gets like, 5 years or something. But if both talk, you get 3 years each. So the dilemma is, well, if I talk, then I get off scot-free. I don't get any punishment, but he'll get punished a lot. So that would be talking would be my best option, right? But then if he talks and I talk, we both get more than if neither of us had talked. So if we don't cooperate, if both of us don't cooperate, we're both worse off than if we both had cooperated. But if only one person cooperates, the person who doesn't cooperate is worse off, and the person who is better off, and the person who does cooperate is worse off, right? So this is, again, it's pretty famous, but I'm just going to repeat it because I think it's important. Now, if you only play it once, then the optimal solution in most cases would be to talk, to not cooperate, basically. Because if I talk and he talks, we both get 3 years, but if I don't talk and he talks, I get 5. And if I don't talk, there's like a small chance that he won't, but he probably will. Now, if you trust the other person, if you've known them for a long time and you trust them, you would say, well, okay, I won't talk, and I trust that person to also not talk, and we'll both get 1 year. And we'll basically go to prison for a year and shake each other's hands and say, I knew I could count on you, bro, basically. But that happens over time. Like, cooperation like that happens over time. Because in that case, I know I'm still going to interact with that person in the future. So if I know that after I get out of prison, the other person's going to be my goddamn neighbor, I better not fucking talk, because I better cooperate, because I know that I'm still going to have to live with that douche. Right? I'm still going to have to live with him. And he's going to probably think the same things, like, oh shit, I'm still going to live like next door to that asshole, so I better shut up about this. And yeah. So if you play the game, if you know that you play the game several times and you get to, a chance at a redo, the optimal solution is actually to cooperate. So another example would be, I'm a farmer, you're a farmer. We both have our harvest, but we both, we can't harvest all of our stuff before it rots. We can only harvest half. But maybe we could both come together, harvest my stuff, and then we could both come together and harvest your stuff. Your crops, whatever. And if we do that, both of us get the entire field instead of just half of it. We both double our profit. But of course, if we only do this once, there's an incentive for me to have you help me harvest my field and then say, screw you, I'm not going to help you. But if I know that next season the exact same thing is going to happen, then I would probably not do that. Why? Because you remember how it was like 1-1 if we cooperate, but 3-3, like the worst outcome if we both don't cooperate. And in a single iteration, it's better to not cooperate because the rewards are potentially biggest. But if you play it several times and you don't cooperate the first time and the other person does, then next time he won't cooperate, and you will both end up worse than if you had cooperated. So they'd all there's actually like tests that were done on this, like statistical tests, where you basically had strategies of always cooperating, never cooperating, or cooperating in the first round and then reacting to how the other person acts. And the last one was actually the most effective way to go. So if the person who cooperates the first round and then sees how the others react, if he cooperates the first round with another person of the same strategy, they will always cooperate, they will always be better off, basically, in the long run. If they meet someone who doesn't cooperate, they'll cooperate the first time and lose, but then they won't cooperate ever again, because because they've seen how the other one acts and basically mimic their strategy. And in that case, both of them are worse off, but not as badly off. For you are not as badly off if you switch from cooperating in the first round to not in the second, and so on, than if you were always cooperating. You're still better off to not cooperate in the second than to always cooperate. Because the people who always cooperate, they get taken advantage of by the people who don't. the people who don't cooperate lose against the people who also don't cooperate, and they lose against the people who, or are worse off against the people who adjust their strategy, but they do win against the people who never cooperate. Now the people who always cooperate, I mean. Now the people who always cooperate, they're best off against, like they have the optimal outcome against those who always cooperate and against those who adjust their strategy. Whereas they lose really hard against the people who don't cooperate. And so, okay, I'm going to try to sum it up. Basically, if you cooperate the first time and then see how the other person acts and then copy what they do, you will not lose as hard against those who never cooperate, but you'll win, like mutually benefit with those who do the same strategy or who always cooperate. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that after a while, after cooperating for 5 years, you'll develop trust in each other. And you'll basically work together to sustain that trust, to work for mutual benefit. So, I haven't murdered you for 5 years, you haven't murdered me for 5 years. I think we can trust each other not to murder each other. So let's work together and enforce the not murdering on the rest of society. So, okay, this was a really long-winded, I guess, explanation of what I think Matt Dillahunty's argument could be maybe summarized as. So I'm going to say, yeah, within a certain context, you're going to have, perpetual cooperation that way without a God. You can have cooperation, you can have not murdering each other without a God. And in this example, it also shows why it would be in my best interest to not, to cooperate with you, to basically not take advantage of you, or to act in a way that's also consistent with your personal best self-interest. Okay, so I think, I'm not sure on how clear I made this, but I think that's a reasonable way to state it. And I think that's what Matt Dillahunty means when he says that, of course, there can be immorality without a God. And that's true insofar as we actually cooperate. But as soon as there's another group of people, like if there's only one person who doesn't cooperate, we can come together and punish them. But if there's a group of people who don't cooperate, and we can't take out the group, we can't punish the group, then that kind of breaks down at that point. What do you do if you have a cooperation strategy against people who will perpetually not cooperate? What do? Well, in our society right now, I am not allowed to go into the communist, whatever house. There's some communist house close to here, like a place, like a narco-communism center or something like that, cultural center, I guess. Now, in our society, if I go in there with a machine gun and mow them down, really grease them, because I really would want to, but I'm not allowed to do that, right? In our society, I'm not allowed to do that. I would be, punished for that. But what if people who had the same opinion about communists as me made up a majority of the population, and we took over government or something like that, or we just had more military strength or whatever, we had more strength, and we decided, no, our ethic is grease the fucking commies. What would stop us from that? Now, if I'm a Christian, it's murder is wrong. You can't fucking do that because you'll go to fucking hell. Okay. In the secular moralist ethic, it's like, there's nothing stopping me from doing that if I have the power, right? That's the secular humanist, I guess, in that regard, really goes a bit postmodernist, in that, yeah, it's a bunch of groups fighting each other, and whoever has the most power gets to enforce their ethic on everyone else. And no matter how realistic that is, I mean, it is realistic, and again, I said I agree with Matt on certain things. No matter how realistic it is for that to be the case, it's not, I think we could all agree it wouldn't be a good thing. Alright, okay, I think I've really, kicked that point to death, so, like it were a commie. So I might as well move on at this point. But yeah, no, actually, the more I think about it, and again, expressing it here in this live stream, the more I think about it, saying you couldn't say murder is bad without God actually does make a kind of sense. It's actually kind of true. Because if you don't believe in a God, and you are outside a culture that was defined by that belief in a God to say that murder is wrong, let's put it that way. So if you're outside a society that thinks murder is wrong, and you don't believe in a God saying that murder is wrong, then murder isn't technically wrong. As long as it serves your personal self-interest, sure, go fucking ahead. It's kind of like that. And Matt Dillahunty says that he's really frustrated that so many apologists, and that's something that made him really salty about Jordan Peterson, that so many apologists say like, oh, if God didn't forbid rape, you'd end up, running through the streets raping tomorrow. It's like, yeah, actually, or start running through the streets raping today. It's like, well, maybe not today, but what about tomorrow? I mean, we've seen in England, right? Great Britain. We've seen in the Telford and these other mass like Muslim, like religiously motivated child grooming and rape gangs, Pakistani child grooming and rape gangs. We've seen in that actually their ethic is that raping little 14-year-old or 12-year-old British girls who are not Islam, like not Muslim, is actually correct. That's that's the way to go. That's morally correct for them. It's like now they have a God who tells them that's correct for them. That's a different thing. Or at least they have a God that they interpret as telling them that it's correct, the correct thing to do. But from a secular perspective, I have no way of saying, no, that's wrong. Because the reason why I say that's wrong is because society told me it's wrong. And the reason society told me it's wrong is because society had a Christian ethic before that. And the Christian ethic told them it's wrong. Yeah, I actually, even though I'm an atheist, and this is the big struggle I have, even though I'm an atheist, I am at the point where I'm saying, well, without a God, who the fuck is telling me that raping and murdering other people, if I have a group that's large enough to enforce it, and it's in that group's self-interest, is wrong? There's nothing telling me that. Now, that's really fucking fucked up and sad for me, because I want it to be wrong. Yeah, but I couldn't say it from a secular perspective. Fight me, bitches. Fight me on that. Not, like, verbally, not physically. I'm not, yeah. So what he also said is, and I'm really drawing this out, so I probably should end it at some point here, but what Matt Dillahunty also said is, maybe, the truth about what is good or useful in religious stories, narratives, whatever, is true whether a particular religion survives or not, and I don't think we lose that. So he does accept that there is certain truths and certain valuable things about religious narratives that are good, that are valuable, that contribute to our, well-being as a society. And he said, well, we wouldn't lose that if we lose the religion, if we just accept that there isn't any God. And I'm actually not so sure about that. Now, actually, one thing I agree with both Peterson and Matt on, which I forgot to mention in the intro, which is really bad because I should have mentioned it before, but I actually do agree with them that the literal and scientific interpretation of God being real and, the things stated in the Bible being scientific truths, that interpretation of it is complete fucking bullshit and should probably not be taken. Right? That leads to religious fundamentalism, like saying the Quran is literal word of God. Yeah, that's full of shit. That's bullshit. That's not true. And interpreting it that way is not very good. It's not conducive to civil society. I'm completely on board with Matt on that point. I should have mentioned that before, but I didn't. But the thing is, if you throw out the religious narratives, if you throw out the religion, and you say, well, we can't always go back and find what's valuable in them. Well, what's valuable in them being valuable or true, like the truths in religious, those that there are, in religious texts, are also kind of contingent on the existence of a God, however defined. Right? If a God doesn't exist, then whatever is in there is not really that true or valuable, because it's all like God existing is the presupposition of each and every one of these truths. Now, what Jordan Peterson, I think, is trying to do is to extract the truths and the lessons from the religious texts that are to be had, and to basically say, okay, this is what's worth preserving, let's preserve this, to basically get it all out before no one accepts the existence of a God anymore, before no one's religious anymore, and so that we'll have something to carry on basically later. And the thing is, to Matt, I would basically say, well, maybe we should not try to show or not try to throw out the narratives and replace them before we actually know what's of value about them. Now, he quoted a thing about, there's passages about slavery and stuff about women being worth like 2/3 as much as a man and whatever. It's like, well, let's take weightlifting. If your goal is to lift a lot of weights, and men have more upper body and lower body strength than women, substantially more on average, not all, but on average, then if that's your goal, women might as well be worth 2/3 as much as a man in a weightlifting competition. In that context, that might be true. Now, that's a pretty preposterous, ridiculous example, because you'd say, oh, that's not what was meant in the Bible passage or whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe, but maybe there is contexts in the world where that quote is sort of true. Maybe there is actual wisdom, maybe there is not. I'm going to agree, there's a lot of shit in the Bible where there's probably no wisdom in keeping it, but maybe there is. I don't know. Maybe we're looking at it wrong. I don't know. I don't know, throwing everything out and saying there is no God and we can go through it later with a skeptical lens and look for truth later, I think that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater and not being able to recover it, insofar as if you accept the religious texts as being true, but you don't understand, they sound wrong to you, like you don't understand why they're true, then maybe the way you're looking at them is wrong. Maybe you have to take a different approach of truth. We've already stated that the scientific approach, the world is 6,000 years old. Yeah, that's not true. Okay, whatever. We've established that on that level of analysis, it's not true. So is there another level of analysis where the 6,000 years is some figure some asshole later came up with? It's not even something that Jesus said. But, if the passages that are quoted or whatever, if they don't sound right to us, like, oh, I cut my neighbor's head off and threw it over the wall or something, like, oh, that sounds preposterous, dangerous, ridiculous, whatever, that can't be true. It's like, okay, maybe we're looking at it wrong. Maybe there's some if and when conditions or whatever in there. Like, maybe it's more specific than we think. Maybe we're looking at it through a literal lens, not through a figurative lens, whatever. Maybe we just have to switch up the way we look at it, and maybe it makes sense then. Now, granted, not everything will make sense then, but maybe a lot of things that don't make sense currently will make sense then. All right, again, before I ramble on too much about this, I'm going to stop myself here and hope the point was gotten across well. And if not, I do apologize. That's as good as I was able to formulate it at this point. All right. Whew. All right, something else. Yeah, there was some disagreements on a lot of words on what they really mean. There was, again, Jordan Peterson saying that morality or rules are embodied. They're in how we act. That really shows what we do. So the basic point on why Matt Dillahunty is not an atheist, even though he says he is, Jordan Peterson would say, well, you are not acting like an atheist. You are acting as if you were embodied with the Christian morality system, or as if you were embodying the Christian morality system. Therefore, you are, a believer in God's, or that's what he said, but I think what he means is, therefore you are, accepting through action the Christian morality proposition. Now, Matt found that to be preposterous and wrong, and I don't think it's actually preposterous or wrong, because as I laid out before, I think that the racial superiority types, the SJWs, the group thinkers, they're probably closer to the true atheism than Matt is, in that, well, we made up our own ethic, as I explained before. We made up our own ethic, and our ethic is to beat the crap out of you, and we have the strength to enforce that. Now suck on that. And if your response is, well, you can't do that, that's not moral, it's like, yeah, why is it not moral? Well, is your answer because we're stronger than you? Well, then you're just proving their point. You're a group, you're stronger, you can beat the crap out of them if they try to do the same to you. So there we go. Now, if your answer is, well, it's wrong on a moral level, not because I'm stronger, but because it's actually morally wrong, then that's because the Christian or whatever religious or whatever ethic that your society has told you that that's morally wrong. But that societal ethic comes from the Christian or Judeo-Christian or whatever ethic. And as we've seen, Islam or the Islamic ethic can be construed, I'm not saying it is that way, but it can be construed by some Pakistani pedophiles as meaning that you can actually rape underage or 12 to 14-year-old British girls in Telford and many other cities in the UK because it's religiously sanctioned. So there's other religious ethics that have a different view from our societal ethic, which says rape of minors or rape in general is generally wrong. It's morally wrong. That's not a general religious. It's not even a general societal thing. That's actually specifically Christian. So yeah, this is actually specifically a Christian, Judeo-Christian thing. No, it's not okay to rape 12 to 14-year-olds just because they have a different religion or belief set than you. That's maybe some of the Far Eastern, Taoists, maybe they have that. I don't know anything about Taoism, so whatever. But apparently Islam can be interpreted as not having that. Alright, so you saying that raping 12-year-olds is wrong is actually a Judeo-Christian, embodying Judeo-Christian values that are still in our culture. And throwing out God then consequently means that you throw out God, you throw out the ethic, the Christian ethic, which says raping 14-year-old girls or 12-year-old girls because they disagree with you politically, religiously, whatever, is wrong. You're throwing that out too, to a degree. Now, it doesn't mean you start, raping people tomorrow, because you're still, you were still brought up that way. You were still brought up in that ethic. You're still going to embody that ethic. You're still going to act as though the Christian ethic were true, even though you call yourself an atheist. And that's, I think, what Dr. Peterson means with, yeah, you're really acting out a Christian belief set. I think he actually means that, yes, you act in a way consistent with the Judeo-Christian values that have defined your culture, as opposed to Islamic or secular ethics didn't define our culture, but they're starting to, which is why we get SJWs, which is why we get the alt-right, which is why we get group warfare, which is why we get the Hobbesian nightmare. Really, I think that might be part of it. And I might be completely wrong on this, certainly possible, but I think one of the reasons is actually, as Dr. Peterson is saying, is that the Christian foundation is just falling apart beneath us, and it's opening up a giant hole where our morality should be, and it's like, well, shit, what the fuck am I going to do now? Anyway. And I've criticized at the start of this also that Jordan Peterson doesn't really define what he means by God. What is God? Who is God? And that actually does trouble me to some degree. But what he says about that is that there's like some warnings against using the name of God. You can't say Yahweh, basically Jehovah or whatever. You can't use the real name. There's warnings against that in the literature. So he would basically say the reason I'm not defining what God is because there's actually warnings in the religious text against saying what God is. You're not allowed to make a picture or an idol of him. You're not allowed to box him in, sort of, because he means different things to different people. Now that might sound like a lazy excuse, and it does to a certain degree sound like a lazy excuse to me, but really it might actually be true, because my God would be something different than your God. And if we try to define what that God is, if we try to speak his name, so to say, to box him in, whatever, we might actually be destroying our perceptions of that. We might not agree on what God is, and thereby destroy the commandments that God gave. Destroy the thou shalt not murder. And this is something religious people have murdered each other over what God exactly is for a long, long time. And maybe that's why they said you're not supposed to say what God is, because you're going to start murdering each other over that. Because as soon as you try to say what God is, and you disagree on that, you shall not murder doesn't count anymore, because it's only for those people who agree on the same God, basically. You shall not murder everyone who agrees with you on this God. Christianity taking it further, saying you shall not murder, period. Screw you, dipshit. Yeah. Okay, again, that was as clear as I could say it. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I was right. Who knows? I think that's about it. So Matt said that, religion propagates by coercion and conquest. And Jordan Peterson added, well, it also propagates by example. Don't leave that out. That's important. I actually do agree with Peterson here. That is important, because in the end, atheism itself is not a belief system that propagates. It's the absence of a belief in a deity. I understand that, and that's what my definition of that was. But it basically says, okay, we're going to take this moral system away, or the foundation for it. We're going to take the foundation for it away, which means that you can't now give reason or give rationale to why you have that moral system, which is, making your moral system hang up in the air without any ground under its feet, like in Roadrunner, basically, when they go off the cliff, kind of. So yeah, that's what atheism is. But then a separate morality emerges within that, and now you have to justify that separate morality. And how does that separate morality spread? How does secular humanism spread? Well, you could say by example, sure. But what if you have the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany against you, who want to destroy your secular humanism? They have a different worldview. Well, you bomb the living crap out of them and shoot half the people in their country and firebomb their cities, which I would say is a form of coercion and conquest. And then you force them to take on your secular humanist ethics. Like, listen, bitch, your shit doesn't work, and we're going to force you to actually agree with us instead of agreeing with what you formerly had as a moral system. I'm not sure on how clear this was, but I think it's as clear as I can make it. So I'm very sorry for rambling on so long. I thought I tried to drive home the point I was trying to make and formulate it in an ever better way. And probably I horribly failed, maybe not. But if Matt... Now, I would actually love to talk to Matt about this, because I would... Or Peterson, I'm not going to. My channel is way too small for that. But if the stars align, and I get to talk to either of them about this, or Sam Harris, I'll take anyone at this point. I don't care. I would really love to hear their response to what I just said, because I think, even though I am an atheist, I think that atheism, that not having a God basically leaves you with the problem of justifying why you shouldn't just murder everyone who disagrees with you. Or why, at least maybe not justifying that, but justifying on why that's wrong. I mean, you could say it's not in our personal self-interest, because if we start a war against them, then they might wipe us out. They might kill us, so it's not in our best interest. Okay, fair enough, but what if they start a war with us? What do we do then? Maybe a reason why Telford and the other Rotherham, like the rape scandals there, weren't really reacted to in a way is because there's no Christian ethic telling you, no, this is absolutely wrong and you absolutely have to go against it. Maybe the people there said, well, we can't justify our moral system. No, they didn't actually say that. I know they didn't actually say that. But what if they said, well, we can't justify our moral belief as being better than theirs, and every religion, every culture is equally valid, so I guess we'll just have to let them rape other people then. I know that's not what was said, but that might as well been what was said. Might as well could have been what was said. Again, I hope I didn't strawman anyone. I hope for those who watch this afterwards, this is useful in any way. I hope I didn't ramble on too long. Maybe I could make a condensed version of this. Maybe I should, maybe not. Write me in the comments, I guess. Thank you very much for watching, everyone who did. And yeah, see you in the next one, I guess. See you later, I guess. So if you like what I did here or what I talked about here, certainly write me in the comments. I think that actually does more than anything else, or share the video, because if I see that there's a lot of interest in more English speaking videos, then I might do more of those. Again, as I said, it's mostly German speaking content here, but if you want more English speaking content, I'm certainly willing to do that. Yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Marcel Stöckli writes, erst grad zuschaltet, so he just came in. Yeah, sorry, we're gonna have to quit now. I don't actually know, I think, do you speak, like, how good is your English? I don't think I have to translate for you, right? Because there's actually some of my viewers, I don't think it's him, but there's some of my viewers who are actually not very good at speaking English. So for those, I would have to translate some things, but I don't think it, yeah, not for him. Okay, fine. Yeah. So of course you can just, go back to the beginning and watch it from there, Marcel. It's perfectly, I understand. It's perfectly valid. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Tell me in the comments or wherever on Gab or Minds if you found this interesting and if you would like to see more English speaking content out of my channel, or if you would like to see a shorter version of what I just talked about. Like, I could try that, although short is really not my strong suit in this channel, but I'm going to try at least. Yeah, alright, thank you very much for watching. My name was Bernhard Everett, and we're going to see each other probably at another point in time. Who knows if the stars align. And peace out.